Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 26th of September 2024, and this is just a quick but important discussion about the conflict currently unfolding in the Middle East. Guys, for anyone tracking this conflict, such as myself and others, you would have seen this coming. And now, for everyone else out there, you're starting to see this unfold on probably your mainstream news platforms that you watch. Everyone get out of Lebanon, they're saying. 4,000 people injured through exploding electronics, over 500 people killed this week alone, following hundreds of airstrikes. And guys, you're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see the same scenario unfold as that seen in Gaza. Politicians and other representatives across those political stages are going to be calling for peace and ceasefires and talks or negotiations. They're sorry to be the bearer of bad news again, but none of that's going to happen just yet. The objective presented, the military theatre is set, and Hezbollah are going to get pounded until either they're all gone or Iran get directly involved. And the latter is preferred. Iran is the target, and for reasons I'll mention in this session, and I've probably mentioned in recent videos. I've been following the conflict, that's the Middle Eastern conflict, since Hamas went across the Israeli border back in October. That is when this all started, or this round of battles and conflicts started. And I'm not going to talk about the tensions in the Middle East prior to that. Not too much, although some of it is relevant. But the aim here is to just give you some hard truths and just a bit of a wake-up call, really. Many of you are only just hearing about this over the last 10 days. And why? Well, like I've just said, because all you watch and listen to is mainstream news. So if they're not reporting it, then you're not going to know about it. Quickly, for those of you that have no idea, Hamas crossed the Israeli border, killing over 1,200 Israelis. Israel, in response, went into Gaza, the home of Hamas, and pretty much flattened Gaza, taking out around 8 to 10,000 Hamas members, and unfortunately killing thousands more innocent civilians. Just quickly, guys, I'm going to throw up three slides. I think that's how short this discussion is going to be, so just bear with me for a second. Anyway, since then, numerous attacks have happened between those two sides, but other members have joined the party since Israel sort of retaliated in Gaza. So Lebanon, Israel's northern neighbor, is home to the Hezbollah organization, or militants, terrorists, or whatever you want to call them. They have been and continue to attack northern Israel. The Houthis in Yemen have been attacking commercial container ships in busy shipping lanes to cause disruption. The Houthis being another terrorist organization, or again, whatever you want to call them. Hamas in Gaza, also branded a terrorist organization. And there are more organizations across much of the Middle East. There are still Al-Qaeda factions and groups across the Middle East and also Africa and Asia. There are many different types of militant groups across Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and the list just goes on from there. And why am I going on about these terrorist organizations? Well, I think whether it be an excuse with a hidden agenda and or a legitimate reason, this is a fight against terrorism. Iran is the main contributor funding many of these terrorist organizations, and Iran is considered a terrorist state or country. The key word used here is terrorist. And the reason I emphasize the word is because the West, and when I say the West, let's just place the US, Europe, the EU, NATO, and other such establishments into that group, have an ongoing war against terrorism. Israel are a very small country surrounded by terrorist states, groups, or countries that harbour and breed such organizations. Israel have the right to defend itself and defend itself until the bitter end it will. The Jews are not, they're not going to be quick to forget the slaughtering of over 6 million Jews during World War II. And that alone, ladies and gents, is enough for, an entire nation to want to defend and protect its nation. In war, it is not about keeping a tally on who is killing who and, what those numbers look like. Hamas hid and fought whilst hiding behind innocent civilians in Gaza. And unless you can flush them out on an individual basis, there's inevitably going to be casualties of war. Israel see Hamas as a terrorist organization and a threat to national security. Now, they have Hezbollah on the northern border of Israel, who have been launching rockets, shells, and missiles into Israel itself since the war started in Gaza. If Israel do not do anything about this second threat, then they're in trouble. So they've got to go into Lebanon and take out Hezbollah. And sorry to be that bearer of bad news again, but there's going to be more innocent victims of war, as we saw in Gaza. Guys, if you can't cope with or sort of understand the concepts of war, then can I advise that you maybe best move on to sort of other channels and maybe channels that aren't really covering war and conflict. If you're listening to this and you're in the process of taking those bubbles off your heads, then welcome to the real world. Now, this is how I see it. And guys, this is only my opinion again. But I believe the West want to, or they need to take out Iran. As I've just mentioned, Iran fund and support many terrorist organizations in the Middle East. But more importantly, Iran are now in possession of nuclear weapons. That is like handing a nuclear weapon to a terrorist themselves, really. And that, ladies and gents, cannot happen. So, what you see unfolding on your TV screens at the moment is going to get worse. The initial intention here for Israel, that is to push Hezbollah back away from the northern Israeli border first. But ideally, the West would like Iran to be drawn into this conflict. So that gives the green light, really, to move in. Just like Putin's using Ukraine as a proxy, and the West are using Israel, I suppose, as a proxy for a wider gain, and that is Iran. And just to put a twist into this mix, Iran have provided Russia recently with medium to long range missiles to be used against Ukraine. So that's not going to sit well with the West. However, another reason for the West to go into Iran. But we, or some of us tracking the war, have seen many Russian air transport planes flying into and out of Iran on a frequent basis. And it's believed that Russia have been providing Iran with weapons. You've got to ask yourselves this, though, guys. What type of weapons is Russia providing Iran with? If Iran are sending Russia long-range missiles, it could be that Iran are nearly, but not quite there with their nuclear weapon program, but needs, they need them soon in preparation, maybe for the Israeli conflict. That would make sense on all fronts. Whether Iran have nukes of their own or not, I would put money on it that they've got them now, and they've probably got them from Russia. As these two conflicts and battle theatres unfold, it looks like, to me, this is, guys, that they're both synchronizing. So when I say these two battles, I'm talking about the battle or the war in Ukraine with Russia, and also the war in the Middle East between Israel and potentially, 3, 4, or 5 other countries. But I see this, it's like they're both synchronizing. And it kind of makes sense, really, because you see Russia and Iran helping each other out at the moment, and the West are planning on taking out both Putin and Iran. So Putin is now a direct threat to the NATO alliance, the EU, and Europe as a whole. And he is threatening to use nuclear weapons. And you have Iran in possession of nuclear weapons and are funding and supporting terrorist organizations across the region. So that, ladies and gents, that's it. I can't emphasize this and the importance of what's going on anymore. If anyone out there thinks that this is all a load of bullshit and none of it's going to affect us and there's nothing to worry about, then they seriously need to book themselves into a doctor's and get your head sort of examined. I don't want to be this guy sat here saying I told you so, because believe it or not, I don't want any of this to happen. I don't want to see the fear on my kids' faces and on the faces of everyone else around us. But flip side of that coin tells me do not be ignorant, guys. Look at what is happening, and at the very least, what is the worst that could happen if nothing happens? Okay, so if you listen to these videos and you go off and you prep and you and everything else, what's the worst that could happen if all the peace talks come into play and everything goes back to normal? You may have spent some time and money that you don't have getting prepared, but believe me, you'll be so much more thankful if we were sort of impacted in any way and you were prepared for it. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is that by not preparing or not taking note or not listening or not considering what's going on, it is going to have dire consequences for all of you. Guys, I'm not here to tell you a shitload of prepping stuff and talk a load of bollocks. If these videos can at the very least just open your eyes and just make you think outside of the box, then I've done my job. And just to finish off, my concern is that both of these seem to be synchronizers, and as I just sort of mentioned, to me they're synchronizing. And what I mean by that is there's going to be a time where the West become involved in one or both of these conflicts because we're not really directly involved. If Putin goes into just one of the NATO countries, then that's it. And or if Putin gives the green light for a tactical nuke to be used anywhere in that theatre, then that's it also. And if Iran want to get involved and start attacking Israel, and Israel are put on the back foot, which is likely, then I believe you could see a nuke or two being used in that theatre. However, in the Middle East, I think that it would be more along the lines of an airburst EMP detonation in the Middle East, which would absolutely cripple, Iran's fragile critical infrastructure, leaving them completely disabled. That, in a strange sort of way, would be more acceptable than, let's say, a ground burst nuke kicking up radioactive fallout. I think Iran know. I think they know this as well. I think they know that there's every likelihood that an EMP could be used in or above their country. And if that happened, you could see Iran firing one of those sort of Russian nukes across the border into Israel. And I'm not sure Iran would be so considerate using an EMP. They're more likely, I think Iran are more likely to you use a ground burst. I think all bets are off once you've taken out their critical infrastructure. But once that happens, like I say, all bets are off. The world will be calling for immediate calm in the region, but the message would have already been delivered. Iran as a nation would be crippled, but not destroyed, and Israel will walk away bruised, but not totally defeated. Listen, guys, I'm merely speculating now, but it's something you have to consider as a prepper. Speculate, simulate, and run through possible scenarios in your mind, which ultimately allows you to better prepare. It doesn't matter whether it's something that may or may not happen. Being prepared for you and your family is got to be paramount, especially during these times at the moment. As I finish off, back in April of this year, 2024, various outlets, online platforms, and defense experts were suggesting that if Israel succumbed to an attack from Iran, then they, being Israel, would have to respond in a very unconventional way. The EMP was being described by them as the E-bomb or the electromagnetic bomb. EMP, E-bomb, they're both all the same. These experts suggest that such bombs would be used against Tehran in Iran and other major cities in Iran, including areas where the Iranian nuclear facilities are found. The EMP blast itself would not really kill anyone initially, hence the suggestion that this may be the preferred method. However, the effects of the damage can literally cause devices to blow apart. Again, as I mentioned in my last video, something similar to what we've all witnessed over the last week or so in Lebanon. But let's not go down that track. The EMP would destroy Iran's ability to literally function, which is key to Israel. And this makes a whole lot more sense to me. I believe this. Actually, I believe this was something that nearly happened back in April when Iran launched 300 plus missiles at Israel. But I think I won't go into it now, but I was listening to some Sky Master messages. It went on for hours. There were some attack options being broadcasted or encrypted messages, and it just sounded like that something was about to go off, and it was, right at the very end. It sounded like that they were told to stand down. For me, it seemed like there were, a couple of F-35s on their way to Iran to let loose a couple of EMPs, and then were told not to right at the last minute. Guys, I think the seed has been sown there. There is so much chatter online at the moment about nuclear war, nuclear weapons, Russian threatening such attacks on a weekly basis now, the possible use of tactical nukes, the threats still present. Um, you know, they, when I say that those threats still present, what I mean by that is that there are still threats being presented against the nuclear power stations in Ukraine and also Iran. Nuclear weapons, to some degree, are going to be used at some point in the future. Superpowers and other countries have invested millions and billions into this warfare, and unfortunately, they will have to be tested out there on the battlefield. An EMP is less harmful in the short term, as I sort of mentioned, but can be absolutely catastrophic in the long term. When you have millions of people without power to their homes and being sort of fed into their lives via devices and services and systems, cars and everything else, that alone will present a whole new set of challenges. And just one more thing before I depart. It is also being suggested that Iran have sent or armed Hezbollah in Lebanon with a new EMP weapon. So we could have both sides now with EMPs. That is Lebanon and Israel. So the dynamics of that conflict are, they're changing all the time. To be honest, Israel will already be aware of this. If I'm aware of it, then they will definitely be aware of it. Hence the reason why Israel are bombing the hell out of the targets all across Lebanon at the moment. Maybe they know or think that the EMP's stored or on the back of launchers there somewhere, and they're taking them out. Iran has rushed to supply Hezbollah with electromagnetic bombs that can, they say, paralyze communications and disable radars, as the risk of the border confrontation with Israel turning into a full-scale war grows. It is said that Hezbollah already possesses bombs and missiles carrying explosives or explosive electromagnetic warheads, as the Revolutionary Guards successfully deliver these quantitative weapons not long ago. And that's it, guys. We are moving closer to these possibilities, ladies and gents, and at the very least, just be aware of that fact. Get yourselves military fit, infantry aware, and get yourselves prepared, guys. Have a good day.